And there you have it. Rush Limbaugh, dead at 70. Or something like that. He was a monster, terrible human being, one of the worst out there, as I'm sure you in the audience are aware of, which is why you are listening to a competing program. So one competitor down, one more competitor down for bad faith.
Do you think there is even one overlapping listener between us and Rush Limbaugh?
There's a lot of weirdos out there, Bree. There's a lot. The concept of audio content makes people deranged in some way.
Was his name really Rush, or is that like a nickname or a stage name? What is Rush? I'm like saying the words Rush Limbaugh and hearing those syllables in my mouth for the first time as if they're new, and they don't make any sense all of a sudden.
You know what it is? He named himself. It is a stage name. He named himself after the brand of poppers.
Was there what? Is there really a brand called Rush or something?
It's the brand.
Not only is it a real name, he was a junior. He was born to Rush Hudson Limbaugh II. He was Rush III.
Oh, well, his parents named him after the poppers. See right here.
Oh, okay.
There you go. That's how he was. I mean, that's part of how he was conceived. Okay, but let's move on. That's my good faith for the week. I think you had a bad faith, Bree.
Well, there was a town hall last night during which Joe Biden performed beautifully.
Okay.
If you're a leftist who wants the world to see everything that you've been screaming for the last 2 years about why Joe Biden is the exact wrong person for this political moment, the most viral moment among many, because I mean, he did the thing where he repeated the remark about biracial commercials being proof that we live in a just and equal society.
If you want to know where the American public is, look at the money being spent on advertising. Did you ever 5 years ago think every second or third ad out of 5 or 6 you'd turn on would be biracial couples?
Yeah, there's a lot of biracial people on commercials nowadays. I mean, fact check. He's right. There is a lot of biracial people.
Virgil, that should be your next gig. You're missing out.
Commercials pay a lot. You get residuals. It's really, that's good work if you can get it. But podcasters have not had a great track record of appearing on national commercials.
Well, relatedly, I actually worked with a partner once who paid his kids' college tuition with a Colgate commercial that he did when he was a little kid. And ever since he told me that story, my real only hope in the back of my mind of ever escaping the law firm was, maybe I can get a commercial. Maybe I can get a commercial. I have an afro. You
look like someone who would be in a commercial.
35-year-old mom.
You look like you would look like a cool mom making laundry. Doing laundry.
Lysol.
Like you're
Jason,
dancing as you're Swiffering.
These dirty track clothes again. Oh, what is that smell? I'm ready. I was ready to go.
You're ready. That's perfect. Like this is your audition tape. Just send this around.
Well, people who want another escape from their serious student loan debt were hoping for a different answer from Joe Biden last night than go do a biracial commercial. What they were hoping for was that he would co-sign this $50,000 of student debt relief that's been championed, of course, by Elizabeth Warren and now even Chuck Schumer. I think the writing was on the wall. The specter of canceling it all, as Bernie was pushing, was so scary and put enough pressure on that even relative moderates were getting behind this $50,000. So he got the direct question last night, will you support it? And he said,
we need student loan forgiveness beyond the potential $10,000 your administration has proposed. We need at least a $50,000 minimum. What will you do to make that happen?
I will not make that happen. It depends on whether or not you go to a private university or a public university. It depends on the idea that I say to a community, I'm going to forgive the debt, the billions of dollars of debt for people who have gone to Harvard and Yale and Penn and schools. My children, I went to a great school, I went to a state school. But is that going to be forgiven rather than use that money to provide for early education for young children who come from disadvantaged circumstances?
The gag is first and foremost that we're talking about student debt cancellation. The overwhelming majority of debt is federally held debt. So when he starts talking about the price tag for this thing, there's no price tag. The only question is the government going to miss out on continuing to profit off of all of our student debt at an 8% interest rate, as they've been doing so far. I think the number is something like $135 billion over the last 10 years the government has earned off of our interest rates. Two, he says, what depends on whether you go to a private college or a public college. That isn't a very clear articulation of a policy. I think that even under his plan, he will cancel student debt for people who went to private colleges if they meet certain income thresholds, but only up to $10,000 a year. So I don't even know what he's talking about. But the people with the highest amount of student debt are actually people who went to these for-profit, degree mill style colleges who have an enormous amount of debt, and they don't even get any marginal benefit out of their degree. So screw you guys, I guess.
Public colleges are not cheap either. I like how he mentions this distinction, then goes on to say, but actually I don't want to cancel any of the debt.
Right. Also, he starts to say something about his kids. Like, people like the schools my kids went to shouldn't be free. So I guess, or shouldn't have the debt canceled. So I guess only rich people whose dad were the vice president of the United States should get to go to Harvard and Yale. The rest of us should go to our free community college.
That's what's implicit in this whole line of argumentation is that, and this is empirically true that what our universities are, they're just, playgrounds for the children of the elite so that they can reproduce their various privileges and network with each other. But there's a greater egalitarian ideal that we have that maybe we could have a meritocratic system of higher education, one that's not driven by money. Right. And a good way to move towards that goal is to take money out of the fucking equation.
Right. So, obviously, we should have a bigger conversation about why we have such a hierarchical education system and why it is that we live in a world where even extremely affluent people are cheating to get their kids, like the Full House lady, cheating to get their kids into school, even though why? You're already rich. What is this? That speaks to how messed up our system is, and we shouldn't have such a different outcome in your life if you go to Harvard versus if you go to another school. But we also still do live in a world with those hierarchies, and the idea that you only want people who already have wealth and privilege to have access to the wealth and privilege that can come with getting into those schools is outrageous. What is he going to do? Tell W.E.B. Du Bois, too bad about your student loans. You went to Harvard. Your parents might have been slaves, but oh well.
And last what I want to comment on is this idea that we have to make a choice between early childhood education or paying down student loan debt or providing free college education, free higher education. It's like, okay, you want your kid to go to college or you want your kid to go to preschool? You got to pick just one.
Right. It's bad faith. Mm-hmm.
And right. And it's suggesting that there's this finite pot of money to pay for these things. And it's like, well, for one, we've added trillions to the deficit in the past year. And nobody asked where that money's coming from. And that was enough money to pay, off all the student loan debt in the country and start providing free college education.
Trump's tax cut was $1.7 trillion. I think the total amount of student debt outstanding is $1.6 trillion. Again, that's not something we have to pay for. The government, if I owe you $20, you can just decide, hey, Briahna, you don't owe me $20 anymore. That doesn't mean you have to spend $20. It just means you canceled the debt. That's what we're talking about here.
After a decade of quantitative easing and deficit spending, we all, it's all funny money at this point. It's the balance sheet of the federal government is permanently fucked.
Yeah, and I 100% remember what quantitative easing is because Grace Blakely just explained it to me.
We're gonna do I swear we're going to end up doing an episode about cryptocurrency where you're just going to ask, what is Bitcoin? It's just gonna be like, what is the blockchain? And he repeats this canard that I don't want to pay for the rich's college education. Well, the thing is, nobody's ever explaining where the money comes from in any case for any of this. And we know that Biden doesn't want to raise taxes on the wealthy beyond what it was before the Trump tax cuts. We know that because Neera Tanden, his pick for OMB, just said last week to Congress, no, Joe Biden doesn't want to raise taxes on the wealthy above 39.4%. And there's a reason why when Bernie Sanders campaigned on free college, he said, and the wealthy will pay for it.
Yes.
And the rich will pay for it.
Yes.
And it made it crystal clear that this is a redistributive policy. Because if someone, if you're wealthy and you send your kid to college and they get a $100,000 student loan that you could pay and you get that wiped out by the federal government, but you end up paying $200,000 in taxes, well, you're obviously coming out worse for that. And if you are someone who's less wealthy, who's very working class, lower income, and your kid goes to college has $100,000 in debt, and your taxes don't go up, and that debt gets wiped out, then yes, you're objectively doing better. It's a net positive, and it's Joe Biden. So I mean, I think that's intuitive in people's minds. That's clear. But of course, Joe Biden is not a class warrior. He's not a redistributionist.
Yeah. In fact, he said he wasn't going to raise taxes a penny for anybody earning up to $400,000 a year. $400,000 a year.
So as long as he and Democrats are going to be evasive on actually raising revenues, then it's going to be completely, cloudy and contradictory in people's minds how free college entitlement would function. And that is the point.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of other really amazing stats about this. I remember from that campaign. I think it was something like this. It equates to like a $3,000 stimulus for everyone. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could structure a stimulus, but Republicans have no problem selling the idea of these trickle down stimuluses where the tax credits go to the top 1%, and we're all supposed to think that it's going to make the economy better. The idea of giving some thousands of dollars to ordinary people suddenly is deeply offensive because they very intentionally try to pit one group of the 99% against another group of the 99%, completely obscuring that we could just raise taxes on the 1% and get her done. But that's why we have us, to spread the message.
To keep the faith.
To keep the faith.
No, it's not the end of the episode yet, but it sounds like the end of this segment.